dude, she's gonna annihilate this guy. Oh! What the? Oh, the grave, the tombstone. Violet kneeled down with both of her knees at the tombstone. That is actually a symbolic representation of acceptance, the final stage of grief that I talked about. Denial, bargaining, and acceptance. Hello friends, my name is Benoit Kim, a UPenn educated psychotherapist. In today's episode, I'll break down Violet's process of grief, denial and ultimate acceptance, identity reconstruction, and symbolism behind the burning brooch, the empty mansion, yes, that's Gilbert's, and the starry sky, and much, much more. And major shout out to my growing patron family of 300 and counting for the generous support. The promised content will go live at 15,000 subs. We are making great and steadily process. And your patience and generosity do not go unnoticed, and you have my deep, deep gratitude. And crazy story, guys, our water pipeline in our building bursted. So I almost had to record with my beard unshaved and washing my face with baby wipes. And I couldn't even do my hair because the water was down because of the pipeline damage. So I almost had to record with my beard full blown and also my hat. But 5 minutes before the recording time, water came back and here we are. But is today's rough start to my recording day a foreshadowing of a rough episodes to come? Because many viewers cautioned me against and gave me courage and sent me support saying that, hey Benoit, hanging there because episode 8 and 9 will be rough, which is what I'm recording in today's recording, back to back. So wish me luck, but without further ado, let's get this started. Oh, very, very dark scene. Oh, flashback back to her inception. Oh, what the? Aww. Gilbert. Immediate rough start. Oh boy. This is gonna be a rough episode. Guys, I am already worried, and that's literally 30 seconds into the episode. As everyone wanted, I will be waiting to react after each scene is over so I do not interrupt the flow. But at the same time, guys, my brain is hyperactive with the power of caffeine, and I'm really passionate and I love this show deeply. So if I do interrupt some scenes because I have some very compelling thoughts, please bear with me. But for the most part, I will respectfully to wait for the scene to be over and then collect my thoughts for my in-depth analysis. That said, this episode is starting off extremely rough. So I'm also preparing myself emotionally and mentally. It's a flashback to the inception that as soon as Gilbert's brother introduced Violet to Gilbert, he's like, hey, say hi, bow. And he forcibly used his hands, despicably so, to shove Violet's head down, who is only a child, according to the age reveal from previous episodes, that she's here merely about 10 years old, according to the show that is, that forcibly bowing her head, saying that, hey, bow. And Gilbert, what does he do? He zooms in and he pulls Violet to his side and says, hey, you cannot do that to a child. And Gilbert's brother says, she's not a child. She's a weapon of war. So I know this episode is called the Under the Starry Sky. And I think it's probably about some sort of a symbolic, eternal, timeless, that transcends time and space connection between Gilbert and Violet. Because as we know that Gilbert is dead, but Violet is alive. Because in last episode 7, the end of Violet was finally confronted with the unavoidable reality and difficult truth of Gilbert's death. So I think the episode's title is already foreshadowing of this eternal and ethereal connection between Violet and Gilbert that transcends time and space and life and death. And that's why I think this episode starting that foreshadows this amazing compassionate leadership and compassionate role that Gilbert plays. And hopefully this episode confronts and addresses our concerns about the rough age gap that between Violet and Gilbert. And I really have this glimpse of hope, and I really hope that the love that is revealed through this episode and beyond is the love between Gilbert, the final parting dying wish, the final uttering words of I love you to Violet from Gilbert was indeed paternalistic, like paternal love, brotherly love, this familiar family love, just based on how this episode starts that, hey, don't do that to a child. Amazing. All right, let's go, guys. Get your tissue box ready. Onion slicing ninjas will be appearing, I'm sure, in this episode. Gilbert's brother? Oh! Dang.
何事だ大佐申し訳ございませんあの女がしつこく大佐を出せとお前は下がれ死にたくなかったらな
True
ここで何をしている
大佐
やはり武器は武器だな
大佐少佐がギルベルト少佐がミキカンだというのは事実でしょうか
知らなかったのかギルベルトはもう嘘です
少佐はご無事です
なんだその顔はあいつにとってただの道具だった貴様
No,
が
she wasn't.
感情のないただの道具の貴様が
Not true.
悲しいはずはないだろ
どうして喋っちゃったのよ
いや今の彼女なら受け止められるはずだ
バカあなたいっつも見極めが甘すぎるのよ相変わらず女心が分かってないしとにかくさっさとあの子を探しに行きなさいよ
ああ分かってる
Oh boy. All right, so there's a lot to analyze here. So, as we know that Violet has been what Gilbert's brother initially thought in these interactions. Of course, as the audience, we who have this knowledge beyond this 4D dimensions realm between the screen and the outside world, we as the audience know that that Violet is no longer this emotionless tool. We know that Violet is no longer this weapon of war. Rather, she's a tool that bridges, that conduits emotions and deepens relationships among service seekers through auto memory services. She transforms beautifully and powerfully from the war of destructions and chaos and death to a tool of beautiful reconnections, deepening of relationships that sparks love, relationships, and reconnections. So she went from tool that brings death to a conduit and tool, so many tongue twisters of bridging life. But of course, Gilbert's brother doesn't know that. And that's why he's like, how can you display such emotions? What is that sad face for? Don't make that face. You're a nothing but a tool and a dog to Gilbert, which we of course know that he is wrong. She has transformed immensely and dramatically in the last few years since she learns how to write and develop into this role model, this exemplary, beautiful auto memory doll that united the beautiful nations of Princess Charlotte, Prince Damien, and so many other stories like Iris from her reconciliation with the family that her fellow auto memory dolls and peers and colleagues learn to respect and admire from afar. But here's a true meats and potatoes of that interaction between Gilbert's brother and Violet. Violet was raised and conditioned as this identity-less person. She was nameless. Gilbert had to gift her name of Violet Evergarden So Violet was not only nameless like a weapon, like we don't name our weapons. She was not only nameless as a person, as a tool of destructions, like Gilbert's brother said, she was entirely identityless. She had no identity of her own. Her only instructions and directions in life were to carry the orders, to execute, pun intended, the directives of her superior ranking officers. That's it. She had no personal autonomy. She had no joy. She had no happiness. She had nothing that was worthy of her own. A destination-less nomad, in other words. But through this beautiful transformations and journey, she has learned to going from the life of colorlessness to the life of colorfulness. But why am I talking about her transformation? And why am I emphasizing the fact that Violet was identityless? Because this confrontation, this powerful and unexpected confrontation of Violet to Gilbert's brother, the Navy captain, is what? She, for the first time, decided to make a direction and a choice to confront someone, not by following orders, but to confront the reality and the truth that, hey, is it true that Gilbert is MIA, missing in action? And what did Gilbert's brother says? What? You didn't know? Gilbert is no longer, he couldn't finish his thought, but he was going to say that Gilbert is no longer alive. But what does Violet do? We've never seen Violet lose her composure, ever, until she was confronted by Hudgens, the fact that Gilbert's no longer with us. And then we saw her yelling. She's like, no, that can't be it. He is alive. There's no way he's missing in action. And here's the second time we've seen Violet losing her composure. So she not only lost her composure as this hyper competent doll, but she, for the first time, internalized and accepted and took on the responsibility of her personal autonomy. She no longer was following orders and directions, but instead, she sought out her own truth. She needed to know what actually happened to Gilbert's, the only existence and the source of all purpose and meaning in Violet's life. That's an extremely sad scene, but it's very powerful because that is the first steps to acceptance. And right now, to close on my analysis, here's the 3 stages of grief, generally speaking. Stage 1 is denial. Stage 2 is bargaining. You're bargaining the fact that no, there's no way he's dead. He's not missing in action. He must be somewhere. We just haven't heard from him. It's as if we could bargain with reality and bargain with truth and bargain with death. But it's a protective defensive mechanism that people who are in deep grief, we do. So stage 1 is denial. No way, it didn't happen. There's no way. He's not dead. There's no way. Stage 2, bargaining. And stage 3, acceptance. And I think in this episode 8, we will witness all 3 stages of grief for Violet. Because we already saw denial at the end of episode 7. And right now in stage 2, bargaining, that's what we're witnessing here. And I'm sure moving forward in this episode. And finally, and hopefully, stage 3, acceptance at the end of this episode. Wow. Off to an amazing, strong start. Violet is holding onto her brooch, right? The green emblem, the ember, which symbolizes Gilbert, of course. She is going somewhere with the train. Where is this place? Whoa, it's a big ass mansion. Another flashback? I'm just removing my eye boogers from my eye drops earlier. Oh, she was such a little girl. Oh, she bit the maid to protect herself.
頼むよ。
Oh, like a dog. Oh. This is going to be a rough episode. Oh Lord.
待ちなさい。ダメよ。外に出ては。
どうした？
すみません。この子ずっと坊ちゃまを探していて、食事も
Oh,
取らずに。
attachment and longing. Oh boy, this might be a longer analysis. I hope put on your seatbelts and definitely get that tissue box ready. I'm already feeling the emotions flooding up. So there's so many nuances and intricacies in that scene. So as soon as Gilbert's brought Violet home to this massive mansion, I forgot that Gilbert is from a very prominent family of wealth and prestige. And that's why Hudgens in the earlier episodes in that bar, when he was talking to Charlotte, the deep respect that Hudgens had for Gilbert, because despite him coming from a family of great wealth and prestige, he still voluntarily became this military man, this officer. So deep respect. Shout out to you, Gilbert. So he brings Violet back. And as soon as the maid tried to help her, what does Violet do? She immediately bites the maid in the hands. This is not a judgment or a diss against Violet. Instead, the problem arises and is attributable to Gilbert's brother for raising Violet like a dog and a weapon. No little children bites people and shows aggression for no reason. No children will show hospitality and aggression. Just like dogs. Unless it's the owners who raise dogs in a such problematic and aggressive way, even like pit bulls, they do not bite people for no reason. So when you see problematic dogs, it's 100% owner's fault. So in this case, the problematic and aggressive behaviors of Violet is 100% attributable to Gilbert's brother for raising her as such. And that is a deep, deep sign and byproduct of trauma, unspeakable trauma and hurts and abuses that Violet experienced even up until the point where she was gifted as a weapon of tool to Gilbert. And that's what we're witnessing there. And even the second scene to solidify what I just said is when Gilbert's like, hey, put on a blanket, you're gonna catch a cold. And did you notice the heartbreaking position and the way Violet was sleeping on the floor? There was a bed right next to her. It's a massive mansion. I'm sure they have countless guest rooms. And of course, for how compassionate and generous and kind Gilbert is, of course he gave her a room to sleep in and a nice comfortable bed. Instead, Violet chooses to sleep on the floor like, exactly right, like a dog. Because that's her conditioning and behaviorism outside of her control, instilled and enforced by Gilbert's brother. And I'm sure the other army folks. So Gilbert tried to approach her, but then she immediately backs off. Like what? A defensive and aggressive and hurt dog. When you're approaching an aggressive dog who went through a lot of abuses and hurts and violence, what do? They either bark at you or they run away or they bite you. Do you see the parallelism and the similarities of behavioral aspects between Violet and the hurt, aggressive dog I'm mentioning? It's almost heartbreakingly identical. So even in these quick scenes and interactions, we're seeing endless trauma and endless hurts that Violet had to be conditioned and gone through, all the way up to Gilbert's bringing her home back to the mansion. And the final thing is Violet was looking for Gilbert frantically, right, fanatically all throughout the mansion until Gilbert pushes the door and comes in. Because Violet is like a lost dog. She feels so incredibly lonely and she has no source of family or belonging until Gilbert's. Probably the first human, presumably, that displayed any sort of non-judgments and any modicum of compassion and love. And that's why Violet was attached and was looking for Gilbert right away. Wow.
前線には連れて行けません。あの少女は不安定すぎます。
なぜ反対する？上層部からの命令だぞ。演習場での奴の姿を君も見ただろう。
Heartbreaking.
手が取り柄で他に何の役にも立たん。連れて行ってみろ。
しかし、
そうムキになるな。身寄りのない娘一人、使えるだけ使って役に立たなくなれば戦場に捨ててくればいい。
What the f...
あの子はまだ。
くだらん。まったく君の偽善には付き合っておれん。命令だ。以上。
What's the hypocrisy? I didn't hear any hypocrisy. Yo, F that guy. Oh, Violet trails Gilbert like a dog, like a lost, sad puppy.
直ちにボチアッチャの首都カプリア全面の川で防衛線を張ったが、現在は持久戦に突入。こちらの軍勢は3万、相手は6万。持ち
Jeez.
こたえているが、敵は前線に大砲を送ってきた。それ以降、その砲
That's twice the difference
戦線
in
崩
their
壊の可能
soldiers.
性もある。そこでブーゲンビリア少佐、
は、
君に中隊を率いて砲の破壊に当たってもらいたい。
は、必ず成功させてみせます。
Hmm.
君はここにいるんだ。私が戻るまで動くんじゃない。わかるか？
少佐、準備整いました。
すぐ行く。
A lot of starry skies, symbolic representation throughout, even in flashbacks in the present.
少佐、見張りの兵です。
She showed up. Oh, dude, she's gonna annihilate this guy. Oh! What the? Holy crap. Oh, it's heartbreaking. This episode's insane. Oh, so heartbreaking. Holy moly, dude. Oh my gosh. Oh, that's a lot. Okay. So, Gilbert is, for sure, as a matter of fact, is extremely generous and gracious and compassionate human being. Not just as a leader, but a really kind human being, because he just tried to bargain with his upper rank officer about that, hey, Violet is not ready for front line. She's too unstable. In the military, you hardly ever push back against your superior ranking officer because chain of command and absolute execution of what you're being told is the first thing they instill you in this brainwashing propaganda way in the military. I would know. So the fact that Gilbert was pushing back against the order of the higher rank brass, and brass is a lingo that we use in the military for higher ranking officers because the color, like the brass. So that's extremely rare. So Gilbert did that anyway, despite him being a major and a ranking officer to begin with. That shows his compassion because he cares about Violet deep enough as a child that he was willing to go against the grain and the conditioning of him as a military man. Deep respect. And secondly, when they did go to the front line, because Gilbert cannot defy the order, because as long as you're in the military, you cannot defy the order, whether you like it or not, because you get prosecuted in the military court system. It's a very serious offense, and all the way up to the highest offense of treason, which is betraying of your company or betraying of your country, which can be punishable by death in a lot of countries and even in the US, So it's a very severe crime. So Gilbert ultimately had to comply and bring Violet with him to the front line. But here's another sign of Gilbert's paternal and extremely fatherly love. What did he say to Violet? That, hey, stay here, hide out in the back line in the military camp. Don't come out. Wait for me to return. He did bring her to the front line per the forced order, but he was still in his own compassionate and loving way trying to keep her safe in the back line. That's extremely gracious and compassionate of Gilbert. And this is why I do think that at this point, it feels like Gilbert's love for Violet is entirely paternal, fatherly, brotherly, and familiar, and not the twisted romantic love that I was afraid of in the previous episodes when I was honestly bamboozled and I was shooketh by the rough age gap reveal. Of course, that doesn't take away how beautiful the storytelling is and how beautiful the genuine love is. But I think in this scenes, we're about 10 minutes into the episode. I'm already gathering enough data and evidence to suggest that Gilbert's love for Violet is hopefully fatherly and family. Nothing more and nothing less. But those two scenes is Gilbert trying to safeguard Violet against the danger. Because why? Gilbert understands deep inside that Violet is ultimately a child. He doesn't care what his brother said or what the upper rank brass officer said. He knows that she is literally a child. But then what do we see? This insane fight scene that Gilbert was caught off guard by Violet still following them despite his order because of Violet's extremely powerful conditioning that she was raised as a weapon of war. Gilbert is loving, yes. Gilbert is compassionate and gracious, yes. But he didn't spend enough time with Violet yet. Not enough time to decondition and recondition Violet from this weapon of war to this dog to back to this human being of a child. Violet follows Gilbert through and assassinates and kills all the enemies. But here's what I want to really focus on to close out my analysis for that segment. Gilbert's eyes, which interestingly is also the same color as the brooch that Violet has. You know, the brooch, the ember emblem, the green ember brooch that Violet's been carrying, the transitory objects that I talked about as part of grief counseling. It's the same color. I just noticed this for the first time. Gilbert's eyes are the same color as the brooch. Oh, I think I made this comment in a first episode in the very beginning during the flashback, which of course symbolizes Gilbert's continuing legacy and life despite his death through the brooch that Violet carries through. But Gilbert's eyes were sparkling and we saw this deep, subtle but deep sense of sorrow and sadness and grief from Gilbert's face. Anytime and as soon as he saw Violet killing the enemies. Why? Because if Gilbert was a sociopathic military person, which we know he's not, he should have been rejoiced and ecstatic that, oh my gosh, Violet, you're slaughtering the enemies. Amazing. You're bringing up our chances of victory. But he didn't do that. No. Instead, he was heartbroken. He was sad because he was witnessing firsthand the traumatic transformation and the traumatic embodiment of a child slowly and steadily deepening into the role of destructions and chaos and a weapon of death. He was witnessing that process, the journey of Violet deepening her conditioning as a weapon of war, instead of a tool for beautiful things like the auto memory doll that she became, instead of protecting her innocence of a child as a human being. So we saw Gilbert's heartbreaking process through his sparkling green eyes that depicted sorrowfulness and sadness. He is such a great person. Wow. Back to the present tense. Okay. Oh man, I don't know what's to come, dude. Oh. Oh, she's back to the mansion. Well, Gilbert was. That's why the flashback made sense.
少佐はいらっしゃいますか？
It's the continuity and continuation from the past to the present.
少佐はこちらに
Oh.
いらっしゃるのですよね。
坊ちゃまは
Oh, the grave, the tombstone. Oh. Oh. Gilbert.
少佐のお名前が
It is the major's name.
は
Oh, spoke her name for the first time. Oh.
と
そうだ君がバイオレットで私が少佐だ
少佐読みました。
よく書けている字の練習にもなるからこれから毎日
毎日報告書を出します。
エルトも
それで二機関扱いになって
ギルベルトはもう
Oh, dude, there's... Wow, okay, let me collect my thoughts. There's so many symbolism and there's so much psychological undertone in that scene. Where do I even start? This is the struggle of me waiting for the scene to finish and then doing my analysis because there's so much to unpack. But I do understand it is a smoother viewing experience if I wait. So here's my effort. I want to start by saying that Violet kneel down at the tombstone at Gilbert's grave after revisiting the mansion, which is a continuation of the flashback, to finally confront that, hey, is Gilbert here? And of course, the maid was sad and saying, no, he's not. Well, she didn't say it, but she showed that he's not longer here with us by leading Violet to the grave. And Violet finally read the tombstone, which listed the name of Gilbert. And now what do we see her do next? Violet kneel down with both of her knees at the tombstone. That is actually a symbolic representation of acceptance, the final stage of grief that I talked about. Denial, bargaining, and acceptance. She was involuntarily, because you can tell that she kneeled down, not in a pleasant way, but she literally, her body, I probably relaxed and she had a massive adrenaline crash and she was forcibly and involuntarily kneeled down. At this catastrophic news of, holy crap, Gilbert is not just MIA, missing in action, but he is indeed dead and no longer with us. All these flashbacks and the voices she was hearing, which could also be interpreted as auditory hallucinations. Definition right here. Auditory hallucinations is hallucinations of audio, the voices, and this is not a mental illness or a crazy thing. Let me make this clear. A lot of people who are experiencing sudden and abrupt, extremely powerful grief, dealing with the tragedies of death, we can momentarily experience fleeting auditory hallucinations or even visual hallucinations. Definitions right here. And it is fleeting because it's not a long-lasting thing like schizophrenia. Definition right here. But is a momentarily thing because our brains, which has sensory input, and all the sensory inputs and brain default network for the sensory input, the sounds, the visuals, right, the senses, we can temporarily disrupt our normal brain processing because of the power of grief, because it is extremely powerful human emotions and human experience. So many people who are grieving can experience temporary auditory or even visual hallucinations. So we can interpret what Violet was hearing in two ways. Just a flashback to solidify and to confirm the fact that Gilbert is dead, and or she was experiencing clinically auditory hallucinations because her reality was breaking because of the news, and confronting and accepting the third stage of grief that Gilbert is dead. But we have so much more, guys. So that was that significant scene of her kneeling down. But here's more. That was followed and preceded by a more flashback of Gilbert teaching Violet how to write and how to read. That's so amazing. Another sign of Gilbert's paternal and fatherly leadership style and fatherly love. He was teaching Violet, air quote, who was a weapon of war. Would you teach a weapon how to read and write? Would you teach your dogs how to read and write? Of course not. But you would teach your child, and you will teach human beings who you love and care about read and write, because of the healthy developmental stage. And healthy development of a child requires literacy and education. So Gilbert was beautifully demonstrating the importance of how to be a child and how to be a human being to Violet, who was conditioned, air quote, as a dog and as a weapon of destruction. So he was teaching her non-violent way of communication instead of violent way of communication, which is death and destruction. So even we're seeing Gilbert's surrogate parenting style and leadership style. If that was not the case, why would Gilbert take all of his extra effort, because he's very busy as a major, to teach Violet, who was gifted as nothing but a weapon and a dog? He didn't have to do any of that, but he did. And even a step further, he instructed her, because I think he's learned that, oh, she needs directions and instructions. So what did he tell her? You need to provide a weekly written report as homework to deepen her education and deepen her literacy. Because he doesn't need her to write a report. He's already reading plenty of reports in the front line, I presume. So that's additional effort. And the final thing I want to close out with my analysis for that symbolic, beautiful part is the flashback of Gilbert's gifting Violet her name. He said Violet and Gilbert. And now what do we hear Violet say? Violetto? Major? Of course, she pointed it wrong because it's learning in process. That is huge. And here's what I mean. What's the first two words, or what's the first word that an infant, a baby, says after maybe they hit 1 year old or maybe 2 years old? Usually 1. And if you're a gifted child, maybe even sooner. What's the first word that an infant and every parent would want their babies to say? Mom or dad? Sometimes grandma, right? Based on who the primary caregivers are, but usually mom or dad. And what's the first word that Violet said? Because Gilbert was surprised by, wait, what? You understand me? You can speak? That sounds like it's the first time that Violet uttered any human language to Gilbert after being conditioned as a dog. Is Violetto major? Just like a baby. The first words that babies usually utter or say is the word that hear the most, or the word that they care about the most, which is usually their dads and moms. In this case, the first two words Violet ever said was her name that she was gifted by the person she cares the most about and by the person she's the most attached to. Major and Violetto, Violet. which represents developmental stage by Eric Erikson, like an infancy. Because Violet was indeed an infant per human standard, because she was raised as not a human being, but as a weapon of war. Holy crap, dude, there's so much.
感謝祭だ。3年の間、ここはガルバイオレット、君の功績だ。この町。
Violet defended and helped make this happen.
バイオレット、何か欲しいものはあるか？
欲しい。
She can talk fluently now, ish.
君に感謝したいんだ。
感
Kansha.
謝。
Kamsa in Korean. Oh. So many wounds and trauma.
少し
Physical
Ah,
trauma, mental health trauma. This is a flashback from episode 1.
がるのが適切なのでしょう。
The first flashback
Soda.
from Violet's. Reminiscing about Gilbert's. When she woke up in the hospital. That's good progress. Okay. She's always seen the back of Gilbert, but she always followed him around. She got
ど
distracted.
うした？
少佐の瞳があります。
This is where she finds Brooch, the ember
少佐の
green.
瞳と同じ色です。
Oh, attachment. Oh, this is beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time.
こういうの
Connected to you. It is.
美しい。
ええ
Oh,
言葉です
because war is nothing,
そうだね
is everything but beautiful. Violet doesn't know the beauty of life.
これが一番美しいでした。
Fast learner, extremely gifted learner.
だったので言ったことはありませんが、少佐の瞳は
Oh, beautiful, filled with love and compassion and generosity and graciousness.
少佐。
Oh, like a father putting on brooch and necklace to the daughter for the first time for prom or homecoming.
ありがとうございます。
Oh. Man, yeah, that is the very first flashback that Violet ever had about Gilbert when she woke up in the hospital with the brooch. Was the exact same, I guess, Thanksgiving Market Street where she got the brooch gifted by Gilbert for Thanksgiving gifts. And I think with this final scene, I can 100%, of course I could be wrong because I'm not the authors, but as a reactor and analyst of this episode so far, I can confidently believe and think that the age gap for Gilbert and Violet is no longer rough for me. For Princess Charlotte and Prince Damien, still very, very rough and very perversive, yes. Of course, given the historical context and the historical time, I get it. But at least for Violet and Gilbert, the age gap is no longer an issue for me because I'm pretty sure that it is a fatherly love. It is a family love. How do I know that? We do know that Gilbert is not a sociopath, right? Because he has deep empathy, deep emotions, which is antithetical to anyone with sociopathic tendencies. I would know. I work in the forensic court setting, so I work with numerous clients with sociopathic and sociopathy, which is the diagnosis for sociopath and psychopath. So I work with people with antisocial disorder, antisocial personality disorder, which is the clinical term for sociopathy for a living. So Gilbert is definitely not a sociopath. Deep compassion and deep grace and deep empathy. Second, Gilbert didn't even want to have any relationship with Violet. He didn't want to receive her as a gift from the brother. He didn't want to bring her to the front line as a weapon because she's a child. So even the interactions and entanglements between Violet and Gilbert were forced upon. So it was not a happy, jolly, oh my gosh, thank you for the gift. Yes, I'll take Violet. No, it was forced upon him. Third, during this Thanksgiving interactions, what did we see from Gilbert's face? He wanted to say, hey, pick what you want as my tokens of gratitude. And then he saw, as the camera moved down, to her wounded and scarred legs and her scruffy clothes. She literally has so many injuries, physically and of course psychologically and emotionally as well. So he was heartbroken. He's like, oh, never mind, just follow me. And they started walking down that market street during Thanksgiving festival. So he was heartbroken nonstop since the beginning until even this point. He never wanted to get involved with her, and he never wanted her to get involved to begin with. And then when she finally chose to get this brooch because of the parallelism and similarity and the representations of the green color, the ember, with, Major's eyes, that your eyes were beautiful the moment I met it. Of course, it's not romantically beautiful because Violet is a child and she has no such concept. She has no conception of what love even means, which is what embarked her to become an auto memory doll, to trying to decipher the final dying and parting words of Gilbert. So she doesn't know what that means. But Gilbert understood what she meant by saying that your eyes were beautiful. When I see this brooch, I feel this connection with you. It's attachment theory. It's this only stable and only secure, since there's 4 types of attachment styles I talked about in previous episode. Gilbert represents the only source of secure attachment style that Violet's ever had up until this point. And Gilbert understood fundamentally and deeply inside that when Violet said your eyes are beautiful, the moment I first met you, I wanted this green brooch, not the color of my eyes, blue, but the color of your eyes, Major, is this loneliness, this aloneness, this deep, deep grieving and sad, heartbreakingly so, lack of attachments, and the longing that Violet's been struggling her whole life because she was not treated as a human. But in all that exchange, Gilbert understood. That's why that flashback and that scene ended with Gilbert tilting his head down and tearing down because he was heartbroken for Violet. So with all this list of evidence I just analyzed, I can almost with 99% of confidence and certainty that it is indeed paternal and fatherly love that Gilbert had for Violet, and nothing twisted like romantic love. So, I feel a lot better about this show because it's such a beautifully written story and masterpiece that it would not make sense for the writers to butcher and create any dent in this beautiful masterpiece by including this perverse Japanese trope of pedophilia love. So this really makes sense. And I think even that part of this rough age gap might even be this intentional, masterful writing to really conjure up and to rile up the audience until we get to this episode and you're like, oh, it's not perversive pedophilia love between Violet and Gilbert, but indeed this beautiful, gracious, and compassionate paternal and fatherly love. Amazing. This is a long analysis, so I hope you guys enjoy. Man, there's so much packed in this.
春までにはうちに帰れるかな。みんなで帰ろうぜ。ギルベルト、久しぶりだな。
ホッチンズ中佐。
Hudgens!
中佐
Lieutenant Colonel!
そうはいかない。階級は君の方が上だ。
Much higher
お
rank.
前のそのそっけない態度。
Wow, all the way back, dude. Their history runs deep.
戦わずして勝つような戦線ばかりに投入されてきたし。
君の家は戦費の大出資元なんだ。
Oh, so
軍
humble.
本部が配慮するのは仕方ない。
Oh, they're both from family of prestige and wealth and prominence.
ちゃんと寝てんだろうな。
これはふざけただけだ。楽にしていい。
Wow. And Gilbert knows Violet really well at this point. OCS, Officer Candidate
訓
School.
練所で見た。まだて。
This is the initial impression of Hudgens of
い
Violet,
や、すまない。
which is again flashback to episode 1. Deep callback. Yes, Violet has a name now.
この作戦が成功すれば敵は総崩れになる。おそらく。 会社？
Foreshadowing.
そしたらお前も雇ってやるよ。
True friends. Holy crap, that actually happened.
いいかもしれんな。
Oh boy. Obviously, in a very heartbreaking way, that Gilbert was right in a sense that this will be the final battle. And we learned retroactively and retrospectively that it is the final battle. Not just for the country, but also for Gilbert. Because he's dead. Rest in power, Gilbert. But what a beautiful exchange between Hudgens and Gilbert. And even through this scene, it further solidifies how solid of a person and human Hudgens is. Of course, the joke about, oh, I'm going to start a company after I retire from the army, and maybe I'll hire you. And Gilbert's like, nah, I don't want to work under you. And Hudgens laughingly said as a joke, which manifested as reality, that, oh, I guess I'll hire Violet instead. And he did. But here's what I want to zoom in on. Gilbert said in a more quiet voice, maybe that will be a good idea. What does that say about Hudgens? Gilbert knows Hudgens really well because they go all the way back to OCS, like I talked about, Officer Candidate School. So he knows of Hudgens' characteristic and character. And he approved of Hudgens' joking idea of hiring Violet because Gilbert knows that he can rest in peace if something happens to him, or if this truly was indeed a final battle, because Gilbert doesn't know the future, but we do. Violet will get disposed and thrown away like a trash because she is no longer useful. Like the interaction between Gilbert's defiance and challenging against the higher ranking officer in the military office in the earlier episode. So he's like, this might be a good idea. But Gilbert would not have encouraged Hudgens to hire Violet or even tell, because Violet requires instructions and directions and orders. Gilbert will not order Violet to work for Hudgens if Gilbert didn't truly deepen of his heart believe that Hudgens will be a great social support system, even family support system, and a role model for Violet. So this is a solid evidence, and we've known this, but a confirmation, even with this flashback, that Hudgens is a great person, and so is Gilbert, and they both are looking out for Violet, which is why we've witnessed the beautiful evolution and the beautiful transformation of Violet up until this episode 8. Wow. The final battle.
少佐、
なんだ
Shio-san.
私はもうご不要ですか？
何のことだ
She heard him?
処分される結果、ホッチンズ中佐の元へ移される。
Oh, Violet did hear him earlier.
少佐に命令はいただけないのでしょうか？
Oh, attachment struggle. Starry skies again. Constant starry skies throughout this episode. Deep meaning there.
もう数時間で決戦だこの話は
Oh, they never got to have this talk.
こ
Because
の
obviously Gilbert dies.
敵軍の総本部がそこでまず主攻部隊が砲撃を仕掛けるその隙に我々が地下水道から引転す
She went through the undergrounds because she's small and she can fit through, like the underground
砲
pipeline.
撃開始砲撃開始
Oh, dude, unflinched, completely unfazed. Holy crap, dude, Violet, you're a freaking beast. In a heartbreaking, traumatic way, but still a beast. As a child, dude, it's crazy. So much conditioning trauma. Oh shit, not good.
1班2班は周囲を制圧して敵の増援を近づけるんだそうギルベルトうまくやれよ
Hutchins. Oh shit, there's gonna be a trap.
少佐
Oh fuck, I called it. Freaking called it, dude. Why would you stand in the open, wide open place like that, dude? Oh. You need line of sight. Oh. Oh, everyone else died. They did it? Oh, they did it. Oh, something's gonna happen. Oh, no. Wait, but we know it's not over yet.
少佐
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. I fucking knew it. Oh.
少佐少佐
Oh, wait, I just need a... Fuck. I knew it wasn't over. Oh, man. Okay. So, the deep symbolic representations of the starry sky that I hinted and we've all seen throughout the episode, in the flashback and in the present tense, here's my interpretation of the starry sky. People often talk about, oh, time travel machine. Like, if you guys know anything about astrology, and astrophysics, you guys know that we already are incapable of time traveling as we speak. What do I mean by that? We are time traveling second by second, right? We're literally time traveling. Of course, that's a cheesy joke, but here's actually what I mean. When we are looking at the sky tonight, when we're seeing at the stars, we are literally, according to astrophysics, we are time traveling. What do I mean by that? The stars that we're seeing today in this moment might already have ceased to exist because the speed of light. The travel and the traverse time it takes for the light that we see from the stars when we're gazing at the sky to hit our human eyes on planet Earth, it takes billions and millions of years. What that means is, even though we're looking at the stars and the planets and the galaxies right now today, the actual source of the light and the sources, like the stars and the planets of these lights, already have ceased to exist, because it will take billions of years to get to the positioning and where those actually stars are. So time traveling is already capable within us. Every time we look at the skies, here's a friendly reminder that we are traveling through time and space because of what I just explained through astrophysics. But here's the symbolic representations, and here's why I paused at the starry sky outro. And the symbolic through line of this episode is, like I said, stars and skies represents this transcendence of time and space through time traveling, like I said. What is the thing that Violet would love to do the most? Travel through time and probably ask Gilbert, what does that mean when you said I love you as you're dying towards a heartbreaking scene in the staircase underground somewhere in the shambles? And Violet would love to break through the time and space continuum and through time travel to honor and to reunite with Gilbert. And now, finally, after the final third stage of grief process of acceptance, Violet will probably want to time travel and reunite or bring Gilbert back to life. So that's one aspect of the starry sky. But here's a deeper meaning. Through stars in the sky, like I talked about, it's almost eternal. Sure, it takes the speed of light, millions of years or billions of years for the light from the stars to hit our eyes, like I said. So that's such a large, immeasurable, and such a unquantifiable time, like billions of years, that we can just say that it's almost eternal, seemingly immortal and seemingly eternal. So because of its eternal nature, it unites and breaks through the time and space continuum between Violet and Gilbert. Even though and although Gilbert is dead, and although Violet is stopped by this chasmic divide of life and death between Gilbert and herself, through the starry sky, their connection is seemingly eternal, that not even life and death can separate them, which is what the starry sky means. And through this starry sky representation, every time Violet looks at the sky, like in the earlier episode, when she was visiting Iris's village in this seemingly Vietnam background, right? The beautiful land and the sky and the stars. Violet was looking up because, of course, Violet didn't know Gilbert was dead at that point. But I think she was still memorializing and thinking of Gilbert to share this beautiful scenery with Gilbert, who she hasn't heard back for a long time, and with her ongoing struggle with ambiguous emotional loss. So to conclude my analysis for this episode, that's what the starry sky represents. It's this totality of eternal connection, of love and longing and deep relationship, meaningfully so, that could transcend even the finality and the totality of death. The totality of our meaningful relationships and the totality of our love can also transcend the finality of time and space and life and death. What a powerfully beautiful episode. So, if you found my analysis and reaction helpful and refreshing as always, please smash that thumbs up. And can you hit that subscribe button for me and enable notification? Because you don't want to miss my next episode. Because I truly believe that through my research, through my preparations, and through my immersive analysis, I'm able to share never seen before a masterful level analysis for a masterful level writing and masterpieces. And also, again, shout out to all my Patreon family, and please join our Patreon family as Psychotherapist Reacts. Our content on Patreon will go live at 15K, and we are making the right progress. So your generosity and patience will be deeply, deeply appreciated. And as always, till next time, peace.